Now, a disturbing investigation about a culture of harassment at a pair of Ford auto factories. Ford's CEO made a public apology yesterday for the alleged misconduct. The story raises questions about what's happening to some blue-collar workers. Hari Srinivasan explores why it's proving difficult to change the underlying culture.
Ford already had dealt with a federal investigation, lawsuits, settlements, and changes at two Chicago factories to deal with racial and sexual harassment going back decades. This week, the New York Times chronicled how abusive patterns with female workers had returned to these plants. The reporting team spoke with dozens of women about what they had faced recently and in the past, including Suzette Wright. She first worked at one of the plants in 1993 and eventually quit.
Every time I would have a new instance of something sexual happen, because I had already seen the ramifications of saying anything, I would stand there and take it. And each time that I was taking it again and again, it just felt like more of me diminishing, just getting smaller.
Susan Chiro is one of the two reporters who worked on this investigation for the Times. She joins me now. You work with Catherine Einhorn on this, your partner from Chicago and in New York. What was the culture that the two of you documented?
When we talked to many, many workers, they told us that men would grope them, make lewd sexual remarks about their bodies, and if they complained, they would face ostracism, threats, and a lot of hostility both from their coworkers who were worried that the plants might close and from their bosses.
All right, we have an example of that kind of fear. Shirley Thomas Moore had this to say.
It's hard when every day you come in and if you say something and something is done, it gets worse. So that's why a lot of women do not complain. They don't say anything. There was one particular situation where this young lady, she finally got enough guts to go up there and report it. But before she can get down to the line, it was already known what she went upstairs for. So who's telling it? She was taken off that job and put on a harder job.
In response to your reporting, the executives at Ford put out this statement, or part of a larger statement. I'm sorry for any instance where a colleague was subjected to harassment or discriminatory conduct, and there's absolutely no room for harassment at Ford Motor Company. We don't want you here, and we will move you out for engaging in any behavior like this. Our promise is there will be no retaliation against anyone who speaks up, and no one is above the rules, no matter where they are in the hierarchy. Were these instances that you documented with these women, are they anomalies, are they episodic, or is it systematic?
I think that depends on who you talk to. Ford thinks of them as episodic. Some of the workers would argue they're systematic. We certainly know that there was a huge ongoing pattern of abuses. There was a kind of lull in the early 2000s after the first set of lawsuits and after independent monitors moved in. And then as economic pressures mounted, the auto industry was at bankruptcy and then recovered and a whole new surge of hiring came in. It certainly roared back. Some workers argued it never left.
You know, this is not a small startup company. This is Ford, has a huge infrastructure, has a human resources department. The employees have a union. Why was this culture tolerated for so long?
I think there are many answers. The union turns out to be, in the eyes of many workers, part of the problem instead of the solution. The union has a hard task. They represent the men who are accused as well as the women who accuse the men. But at the same time, women said many, not all, union officials sometimes harassed them or discouraged them from complaining.
As you've mentioned, this is not Ford's first instance of this. Considering that they've had this problem before, what happens now?
Well, I think there are two things. I think the other point is that Ford could have moved much more aggressively and much more consistently, but now they have this new settlement and monitors are going to move in again and oversee compliance, and Ford has been putting measures in place. So I think the great test is going to be, can a culture of sexual harassment really be controlled for a permanent time?
What's been the response of the women that were on, in print, with their photos, with audio, that clearly the boss read about? What have they said about you and your reporting now?
I think that they welcome attention because they feel that attention will help them get solutions. Some of them wanted us to go further and name a lot more people, and we obviously had to apply our journalistic standards to what we felt comfortable including. But I think that they welcomed the apology, but they want to see action.
And these are not women that normally get the type of attention that the entire Me Too movement has shed a light on.
That's right. One of the women said to us that as she saw Harvey Weinstein and the whole Me Too movement, she wanted to start a Twitter campaign called #WhatAboutUs. So I think these women do feel that their plight has been ignored, hasn't been part of the conversation. Was absolutely our motivation to try to understand as reporters what women in blue collar or service industries away from the limelight were enduring.
Is there a feeling of why they felt empowered to speak now?
Well, I think the women involved have been speaking out in the last several years. Not just this minute. The complaints have been going on for several years. I do think that this is a moment where I think some women are hoping that change will be more permanent.
All right, Susan Cherry of the New York Times, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.